and welcome to Ask Nikki Novo. In this show, I'll be performing live readings for our listeners, plus we'll be exploring pop culture through a spiritual lens as I read the energy of celebrities and trending stories. It will be the best reading these celebrities never asked for. Get your heart ready because you're about to receive spiritual guidance for your everyday challenges. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Ask Nikki Novo. So happy to be here with you. Today is a solo episode, which means I will not be answering questions. We won't be doing any celeb stuff. It's just going to be you and me. And I had some ideas of what I wanted to talk about today, but as I was prepping for the episode, there was a little message swimming around all day today and a little bit yesterday, and I just couldn't deny it. So we're going to talk about recession, my friends. Not fun, not sexy, but I know that it's on a lot of people's mind. And as much as I kind of want to keep it light, I thought it would be helpful. And I'm just going to read the energy of recession the same way I would read the energy of a celebrity or the question. So really from a light kind of spiritual angle, and hopefully also offer some help and some guidance. When I was workshopping the episode with my husband, Benny, and he was like, you need to have this conversation. His first question, I was like, well, you tell me like your fears and your questions. And he's like, how can I be recession proof? And so he gave me a lot of tips on kind of what the questions would be around this topic. So I hope it'll be helpful and just help all of us feel more at ease and to feel good about our little recession plan. Okay. So let's get into it. Okay, my friends. So I want you to imagine if COVID was an artist, right? If COVID was like this artist that was like starting from scratch and it's like, okay, I'm going to, make this space and I'm going to break these walls and I'm going to paint the walls and then I'm going to design it and I'm going to turn this like space that was like ugly into something amazing. And this is like my art, right? If that's what COVID was doing on a spiritual level, trying to, wake people up. And even though it was harsh, right? Like COVID is a bitch and, or was a bitch, right? And, but at the same time, like really shook things up. Recession is like the person that comes in to do the detail work. So it kind of reminds me of my husband, Benny, who does a lot of like big projects. He'll come in and he'll completely redo a house. He'll come in. He loves to do the demolition. And then he loves to do like the big stuff, like fixing the walls and the ceilings and the floors and all that. But when it comes to details, it's just not his thing. He usually avoids it. So it's a good time to bring somebody in who's going to do like the really, really fine details. And the good thing about detail work is it's not a lot, right? It's a pain because it's like small and all that, but it's not a lot, which means like recession, I think there's this fear that it's going to rock us the way COVID did. And it's not because it's detailed work. So it's going to be like a light and soft thing, but it is still part of this kind of healing journey we have been on as a collective. So we're going to see it come and just clean up some like fine little details that were not cleaned up from our COVID awakening. So I thought that was like, and it feels very light and soft, where COVID was more like kind of a tornado. So I think that if we can remember that and maybe get, because I know there's that little PTSD that we all have, like we know something, it's almost like when you have an earthquake, you're like sitting around waiting for the aftershock, and like in a way, the recession is the aftershock that we've all been kind of scared and almost like don't have words for. And that is like, and now it's here, and it's really, really scary. But remember, aftershocks are usually very light. Well, I don't know too much about earthquakes, so I might be wrong there, but this is very light. I also see it being very short. If you want to know months, what I'm feeling into is like the brunt of it is going to be December through March. So just kind of like not too long. So I want to start off with that. And this, like, so Benny asked that question, like, how do I be like recession proof, right? And again, recession is not here to mess with us and to punish us or anything like that. We want to kind of look at it that it is here to align anything that got out of alignment or took advantage of COVID. So I see a lot of like, it's funny, the word I kept getting was inflated, which is funny because, like, inflation, obviously, but it felt like inflated pockets are going to be deflated. So it felt like a little bit of like, we were getting stimulus checks and we were getting all that, like the PP loan stuff, and houses were, the market was crazy and people were making a lot of money. And we all, in different ways, got something out of that, right? Or even those of us who left our jobs to go to other jobs and get and doubled our salary, that kind of stuff. So a lot of that is what is going to start to, find its balance and kind of like lightly find its place. And it's just alignment from some of the stuff that was happening before. So it's definitely also, it had the energy of the solar plexus, which is the stomach, self-esteem, self-worth, self-identity, ego. And we're seeing a lot of like, we're going to see like, I was actually getting words, like it was talking to me. It was saying like, it was kind of talking about like, that I'm working to like release the ego and some of like the way that we do money specifically. So, and also was saying that like talking about that question about like staying recession proof, it's really about being in alignment with who you really are work wise. So really having to show up and in your true purpose. So it felt like if you know you're a butterfly, you got to act like a butterfly. If you know you're a tiger, you have to act like a tiger. Like there's no more space for tigers to be walking around like house cats. So in a way, also recession is going to push some of us into that. Like it's going to push us into some of our fears. Like, oh my gosh, like I have no other choice but to show up like a lion right now. I had the luxury of being a cat and hiding and all that kind of stuff the last few years or whatever. But now I'm like really being asked to show up. So a lot of bravery. Recession actually has a big solar plexus feeling, right? So like a lot of like confidence, it will support those of us who are looking for confidence. Like it's going to support us into that. We're going to kind of be, pushed up against the wall a little bit, but from that comes that resilience, that confidence that we look for that only comes from like basically like busting loose from something when it's hard, that resilience feeling like kind of like, oh my gosh, I just got to show up. Also, those of us who are in jobs that aren't really for us, we will be shuffled around. So knowing that and like knowing that if you happen to be laid off or somebody gets laid off, to really start thinking about like what is your true purpose and like how could you really live into that. It kind of made me feel like I was getting this vision of like a tribe, basically, like everybody has a role in a tribe. And if you're, supposed to be a hunter, but you're, working as like somebody in the kitchen preparing food or something. I know there wasn't kitchens, but preparing food, then like you're just not going to do well. So you really have to be honest about being a hunter and then like really giving that to the tribe. So that's like what you're going to be offering. And that is why you have a place. And that's why like you survive and do well and all those things. So if any of us who are afraid of that survival, it's really about really digging into what we have to offer. And some of us have been afraid to really step into that. And this time is really going to ask us of those things. I also got that she was saying, I do get like a girl vibe. COVID felt more like COVID was female too, but like more of a bitch, So I was also getting, she was saying like, I want people to feel confident in the way that they show up. So like that is one of our recession proof, things, like to really feel confident in the way that I show up. I want them to release ego. I will reward innovation and community effort over greed. So we are going to see some kind of entrepreneurs getting savvy and being smart, and just people like figuring out ways to like make things work. And that's really going to be rewarded. Like, believe it or not, there's money floating around, and there will be people that do well in this time, but it has to be innovated and like a very heart-led community effort type stuff. So going back into that, like inflation, not inflation, I don't want to use the word inflation because that like has its own meaning, but inflated pockets. So again, like there's going to be like a calming down of fat profits. Believe it or not, it's almost like, even though COVID was such a weird thing, it seems like certain companies or even us, like some of like us as workers, we got used to certain profits, and we're going to have to scale into those profits, but it's not really going to like mess with survival. It's just that like, again, like being a little bit more honest about what things are worth. So for instance, like, we'll see the house market change. It's not going to change as much as like some of us might want, those of us who want to buy homes. But we are going to see it change a little bit. And it's just like getting a little bit more honest about how much things are and how much they're really worth. We're also going to see like anybody that, I was also getting like almost like some employers that wanted to be competitive, got like really in their ego and was like, oh, I'll just pay like this crazy amount of money for an employee. That's going to be kind of sad and annoying that like some of those offers are not going to be able to like stick during this time. And it may just be like not necessarily a layoff, but a decrease in salary. So just like kind of the balancing of anything that was overpaid for, and the balancing of like anything that we were being overpaid for as well. Like whatever, like, oh, somebody overpaid us. So there's going to be a balancing of that, which you guys, we can do. Like we will be okay. Um, we really do need the help of big corporations here. Like they seem to be the ones that will be dealing, because they are dealing with the problem on both ends. Like getting too used to like big profits, plus using some of those big profits to overpay for other things, like almost like B2B in a sense. So they're the ones that like we're really going to be watching to kind of balance things out. And you're going to have a lot of stressed out CEOs for these big companies. Again, going back, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at my notes and they're definitely not in order. So we want to be recession proof. We want to be in alignment with the way you work, lead with heart, doing what you've been putting off. So there just seems like things that you had gotten messages for. For me, example, like, I've been working on a book and I'm just putting it off. And like, it just seems like those little things that we know that we've been called to, like they need to get done. Like almost this time is going to kind of push us into making those things work, which is why this recession is going to be very helpful and healing. It has more of a fire to it. Like it has more of a, like, fuck it, let's go. Like almost like I don't have time to think. I don't have the luxury of doubting myself, where COVID was more of a stop, observe, like think about things. This is going to really eliminate that luxury of doubt that we get sometimes when there's too much time. So that's a lot of the medicine that recession brings. There's also this feeling that it's going to bring a little bit of balance and order to stuff, things that like, just kind of like almost like, the teacher that comes in and is like, okay, let's tighten this up, guys. Let's tighten up this mess. Again, that detailed person, that Virgo that comes and helps out like the artist that made a big mess, even though, it's whatever, it's something it's functioning. This is a little bit more of like order and putting things into place. There's also this, I was getting a lot of like, I was feeling like global economies. I was feeling government. And this is definitely going to further the distrust in government as the savior. So anybody that like was maybe like betting on their political party or whatever to save, or like that one political party is better than the other, like there's a balancing of realizing that almost like where the two teams realize that that the teams like neither of them are great type of thing. So I don't know what the distrust is going to do, but there's just a little bit of like if I doubted that, like if I ever doubted that, like, oh, maybe, I don't know, this feeling about me kind of, I'm being unsure about the government, was like just a weird feeling. Like now it's almost like it's going to really cement this knowing that like the government's not going to save. And it's almost a lot. And also there's going to be this realization that there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. I was getting this really interesting feeling that almost like for Americans, like the American government is really almost like a show. And that what's most important is actually what's behind it, which is like um, this global economy or this like global government almost is what I was getting. Like, cause it seems like that is really what is running the show the most. And that like the front, almost like the front of the store is the way that Americans see their government. But what's like really happening is what's inside the store, behind the store. And that's really like the way that all the countries work together and or don't work together. And that is going to be something that's like really going to be spotlighted during this time. It looks like there's going to be, I don't know if we're going to see it too much, but there's going to be like this real, it's going to be very obvious how some governments and some countries are codependent, how there's like almost like how we're all interconnected, and that there's like a misbalance of power or an imbalance of power through the way that like we almost like when you're in a relationship and like one person in the relationship has more power than the other, we're going to start to see that within the government. So there's going to be, my sense is there's going to be like almost a kind of like having to go and take care of our own problems at home type of thing. So like people having to be like, okay, I can't super be involved with all these other countries because like we have to take care of like what's happening here. There also seems like, I guess like America looks like that bypassy, like toxic, positive guy in the group, and the rest of the group is like, dude, there's a problem. And like, the US is like, no, everything's okay. And we'll figure it out or whatever. So there's going to be almost like just a balancing of everybody's place as like a global powers. So that'll be interesting. I can't like see exactly, I don't see anything horrible happening. It's more like countries just having to stay in their own lane and also having to work together in ways that maybe they wouldn't have worked together if if this like recession wasn't happening. So that's what I got, guys. It's really about eliminating any last bit of greed. That's really what it's here for. So, and we all have greed within us, right? So we're all going to be finding that within us, and that's okay. It's not a bad thing to look at, and there's a way to be really in alignment and like come from your heart during this time. Those of us who went through, I think they called it a recession, right? Like it was around the time that I had just gotten out of college. So I think it was like 2008-ish, something like that, right? Wasn't that the last time? Definitely does not look like that because this is very, this is almost like an induced coma. it's kind of like necessary, but it didn't happen naturally. So it didn't happen organically. This is kind of like purposely happening. Like these companies, actually, the wealthy people are almost like inducing this recession a little bit, and then therefore also like making a lot of us afraid and things like that. So it's just natural that like we're going to spend less, things like that, because of kind of what's like almost like it makes me think about like when we have hurricanes in Miami, like even though maybe on the news you're like looking at the hurricane, you're like, oh yeah, it's like not going to hit us. But like, because the Weather Channel and everybody's like, no, get prepared, get prepared, get prepared. We're like, okay, yeah, I guess we got to go get prepared. And we buy up all the food and all the things. But it's hard to tell like whether we felt like it was really coming or if, it's because we were being told it. So there's a little bit of that happening here. So it's a little bit self-induced. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy a little bit. So just kind of, keep that in mind and just keep doing you. Like, look at, what is necessary for you to like really do work that you love, and that you really you really get honest about if you were, a utensil, like, are you a fork? Are you a spoon? And like, make sure that you're being used the way a fork is supposed to be used, or the way a spoon is supposed to be used. So to really be used for who you are and for your essence. And that's where you find your place in this world. I know, easier said than done, guys, but just wanted to throw it out there. I love you much, and I'll see you next week. I leave you with this blessing, a sacred song written and performed by my dear friend, Lindsay Simsick. This is Clarity. Yeah.